Alright, so welcome back to another refactoring video. A subscriber sent me his project. He's building out this like recipe tracking application where you can go on and find recipes. And it's a pretty cool application, I'm not gonna lie. I'm actually impressed with what he has. I think it could use some fixing with styling. Like there's not enough white space for the styling and stuff, but we're not gonna focus on that. We're gonna focus on trying to find places in his React code to refactor because there's some places that a little bit confusing, at least for me, and maybe we can make them a little bit cleaner. So this is how the app basically works. You go to your meal plan and you can click on a day. So for example, today's Friday, and then I can go and I can add different meal plans. Like for example, if I wanted to add another one for lunch, I'll go ahead and delete this little placeholder one. So add one for lunch. And then what I'm going to do is inside of lunch, I want to add a recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and search for a recipe. And I'm going to find one in here. I'm going to go ahead and click on, I don't know, the bell pepper one. Looks pretty good. So now he actually adds that to like some storage location and local storage. You can go back and view it. And it gives you instructions of how to cook it, the ingredients that you'll need, and also some steps for cooking it. So like step 1, heat the oven. Step 2, it like tells you what pictures of the ingredients you'll need and then how to do them. And I thought this app was actually pretty cool. Like I think it has potential because when I cook recipes for myself, it's like I've tried like HelloFresh and I've tried some other things, and like they don't break it down to this level of like, okay, this is the step you're on, this is what you need, and you can kind of focus on that. So it's pretty cool. But anyway, you guys are probably more, care more about the features of React. So you can also like bookmark stuff. So if I go to, for example, I'll click Italian here, and then I'll go ahead and click on this lasagna and I will bookmark it. One thing I'll say is that this bookmark is not accessible. Like I can't even see it when it's in the black state. So maybe work on that, make it look a little better. I'll go ahead and bookmark this thing as well. So now if I go back to my meal plan and add one for like lunch again and click on add save recipes, that'll take you to your bookmarks. You can click on one of them and that'll add it to your recipe list for Friday lunch. Pretty cool. I like it. This app's pretty cool. I'm not sure about this bar up here. Like I'm kind of confused about why this bar is showing at all times. Maybe it's because he's like building this for mobile first. But it took me like 30 minutes before I realized that this thing can actually slide. So it's not really intuitive, in my opinion, that this thing is a slider. I don't know if there's maybe some more UX feedback you can give the users to like let them know that, hey, you can actually slide this thing. But I do believe he's doing like a mobile first design, which might be why, because you can slide the days of the weeks too. Like, I don't know, maybe like a little bit of arrows or something. I don't know how you typically do it in applications, but it wasn't very easy to know that this thing actually slides. And something I'm kind of confused about is like if you go to the blog page, it still shows this stuff. I would say that you could like hide some of these things unless you're on like an actual important page for searching or doing the categories. Like why is it showing this stuff on my favorites? But that's just my little UX review feedback. Like I don't think it makes sense to show like the categories in the search bar when I'm on my favorites. It's just kind of extra noise. So anyway, let's just try to focus on refactoring some of this app. And hopefully you guys can learn something from it. So for his application, he's using React with Redux. I haven't used Redux in a long time. I believe he's using Redux Toolkit with like the slices, so it makes things a little bit nicer. But there's a couple of things in here that are pretty complex. I'm not going to look at them. But I think I saw a couple things. Maybe we'll do a couple refactorings. The first thing I noticed is he has all of his pages set up. And he has like a router set up. So if I look at the routes here, for every single route, he has this like route table, I guess, this route array, and every path points to a different component. And the main thing I'll probably say is that if I go to like an actual recipe, let's try to find these tabs here because I do think there's like some potential for refactoring these tabs. So let's go to the details. And let's go ahead and look at this. Now, one thing I'll say is that he has some eslint formatting set up for like the actual styling of the React code, typically what a lot of people do is they use eslint for actually checking for lint errors, and then they'll use prettier for formatting the code. So in this case, I would probably delete some of these things like the quotes, and I have the prettier plugin installed. And I would just let prettier kind of format everything for you. I have spaces set to 2 because my laptop's a little bit smaller. But if you set that to 2, notice how like everything's going off my screen. I rather save it and I have like more real estate to look at everything. But that's why I like doing the 2. Also, you can like split screen it. And now you can actually like look at components and not have to keep scrolling this way. So that's why I like doing a tab space at 2, honestly. So yeah, here is the details component. Let's actually kind of take a peek at this and try to figure out what's going on here. So when you go to the actual like lasagna page, he shows the details and he has a bunch of methods here. And there's one thing I noticed that he has tabs, and this tabs component isn't very generic. It's very specific for this page, which might be fine. I would probably rename it to like instructions tabs, or what would this be called? This would be called like the details tabs. But I did think there's some like additional complexity going on here, like the tabs. He decided to use Redux for keeping track of the tab state. I think there's a time and place for Redux in like a global application store, and I don't think this tabs is a good point to do it, unless there's something I'm missing with like maybe the tab state is coming from the router. But if the only thing, if the tabs in this details page are the only thing that need to know about the tab state, then I would not use Redux to store the tab state. Now, what do I mean by that? So if you scroll up here, we have a use app selector. This is like a Redux way to grab stuff from the store. And he's doing a selector to get the current tab name. It works fine, but again, I think this is like, he's gone off the deep end of putting too much stuff in his Redux store. I think the Redux store is really important for stuff that needs to be shared across like many pages or many components. But in this instance, it's only like 2 components that need to know about each other. So what I would do is, let's see if we can kind of refactor this tabs component to be a little bit more generic. So I'm going to have it take in some tabs. And one thing I like to do with like using TypeScript with my components is I'll do the properties here and then colon, and then I'll put the types right after it. So I'll say like tabs, and this could be a tab definition. So I'm going to say type tab is equal to name, could be a string. And then I'll say component, which could be a React node. All right, so this is going to be a tab, or an array of tabs, like so. And I will go ahead and just do this. All right, so the idea is like I want to redefine this interface for tabs so that it's a little bit more generic, and I can put as many things as I want into this and it'll just take care of it. So he has 3 different tabs. He has instructions, ingredients, and cooking. Now, what I would probably do is tabs, as we defined it, takes in an array. And what I would do is I would go ahead and say like takes in a name, which would be instructions, and then it also takes in a component, which would be this. Did we call it name? I think we called it name. Yeah, we called it name. Let me make sure I import React node like so. Oops. So that the error goes away. And we can also go back to, oh, it's saying name is deprecated. Oh, I need to wrap this in an object here. All right, so what I'm trying to do is I'm making this generic like I mentioned, and let me know if I need to zoom in. It might be too small for you all. So instead of like having all this stuff set up, we're gonna have the tabs be in charge of holding that state, because I don't think it's necessary for the parent component to control the state. So I'm just gonna move the state directly into the tabs for now. If later on you decide you need to dynamically change the state of the tabs because of whatever reason, then you can move it back out to Redux. But I think this is a better approach for right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the ingredients here, and I'm also going to do the cooking. So let's just do another one. I'll say name of cooking and component of this. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut this stuff out, and we're gonna put that directly in the tabs component here. So let's go here. I'm gonna wrap this entire thing in an error boundary, like so. And then make sure I auto import that from wherever it needs to come from. And then error fallback should probably come from one of these. Don't know which one. I guess the lazy one will work fine. So now what we've done is we don't need to keep track of all this stuff in the parent component, because the tabs component is supposed to be smart enough to know like what should we display, what should we not display. And we're going to make it basically, like if I look at this use app selector, he's really just like storing some stuff in the tab slice. So if I look at the tab slice, he's just storing the current tab name, I believe. Yeah, the tab name, and that's about it. So like all this additional work, he has like a slice, he has selectors, he has types, all these 3 extra files, and then all of this additional like, I don't know, use reduce for this tab stuff. Is this the right file? Well, this one's a generic, you're gonna have to use that everywhere. But sometimes you can like kind of get into an over engineering mindset of like, let's put everything in Redux and let's build all these files, and like stuff just becomes really hard to manage. So honestly, I would just say like selected tab name and set selected tab name. And I'm going to say use state, and I'm going to go ahead and set that to the first tab that was passed in, like so. And now we don't need dispatch, and we don't need that use selector thing. And we don't need this, we don't need that. Now again, if we're trying to make this component generic, we don't need this stuff hard-coded here. Let's just delete it. And we can also look over here. What we're going to do is we're going to see if there's any type of repetitive code. So there's 3 details info buttons. And what we need to do is we should probably just loop over the tabs. So I'm going to say tabs.map. And then for every tab we have, that's when we're going to render out that details button like this. And what this allows us to do is like delete this other stuff. And now we have to like basically tell it to be active if the current tab, so selected tab name, is equal to tab.tabName. And I don't know why when I save it takes like a good 3-4 seconds before my linter and my TypeScript like gets rid of errors. I don't know if I need to restart my computer. It's acting kind of sluggish. And then we have this tab handler. Like, okay, we don't need to call this anymore. We can call this directly. Go ahead and auto import use state. Make sure that's working. And what else do we have here? So we have instructions, tab handler. This needs to be tab.name. So whenever someone tries to like click on the tab, it's going to change the state of this component to be that tab. Now, the only other part is we kind of got rid of the actual rendering of the component. So we need to make sure that underneath these tabs, I think we could probably just do it here. We just say, okay, so another thing we need to do is we need a derived. How do we know what is the actual like selected tab? So I'm going to make a derived piece of state here called like selected tab. And that's going to be tabs.find tab.name is equal to selected tab name. So basically loop through all the tabs and find the one that we have selected. And what we're going to do is just go select the tab.content or a component, I guess. All right, and you could probably clean this up even more. Like if you don't want to have this handler out here, you could potentially just put this right here. I don't think we're gaining much by having like a function defined at the top. All right, so let me do this tab.name. Does that look a little bit cleaner? So now this component is generic. I could literally use this anywhere I wanted to in this application because it doesn't have any hard-coded logic related to ingredients, related to whatever else you had there. Let's look. Cooking instructions. And hopefully if we go to the UI and we broke a bunch of stuff. So I probably have a little bit of styling messed up. So let's go ahead and look at the git diff. This is usually a good way to figure stuff out, where I probably just deleted something I shouldn't be deleting. And honestly, I think the component might need to come after the wrapper. Okay, there we go. So let's just go ahead and clear everything, go back and make sure this works. So now we actually have the tabs. And to highlight the benefit of what we just did, because you might not even understand like what the benefit was, is I can just go in here and add a brand new component called like cleanup, save the file, and now I have another one called cleanup, except for these all say instructions. So let's go back and fix that. This needs to be tab.name, like that. Okay. So I just added one called cleanup and it popped up, right? So now if I wanted to go and add more in, it's super easy to do, right? I could just go ahead and add like another one called like, I don't know. I'll just put some stuff, but you get the point, right? So that's pretty cool. You can go ahead and clear out those things. And I think the main difference is he had capital letters. So I'm gonna go ahead and just add I, C. And make sure I select one. All right, there we have it. So yeah, you can be the judge. Do you think this was a better approach to doing the tabs? I think it is. If you can make the component more generic, then I think your component's going to be better, just because it's going to be simpler. It's going to be easier to understand and use. Now I don't even need the selector anymore. I don't need this stuff anymore. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find that tab slice, and literally we can delete this whole thing. Like we don't need that anymore. I don't know where the reducers are set up. He probably has like a store. Yeah, he has a store file. Let me go ahead and open that up. And he doesn't have tab reducer anymore. So I'm going to delete tab reducer, delete it here. And yeah, hopefully the app still works. So again, it's good to understand like what is the purpose of Redux? The purpose of Redux is so you can quickly share state, share application state between your pages, your components, etc. And if you don't need to do that, if you can use prop drilling or context, because like this component like has to basically set up these tabs. Nothing else on this page, like if I go to any other page, it has no need to know about these tabs that were on the details of the lasagna. So if that's the case, then don't put it in Redux, because Redux is like a global application store where you put things that need to be shared across all your components. I did notice he spelled authorization here wrong, but I'm not going to go down that path of refactoring because it's in a bunch of files. But yeah, let's go ahead and keep on looking. I think there was another place that, like, I want to address this issue with like the search and stuff, because I think it's weird that these things show up when I'm on the actual details of what I'm looking at. Like I want to learn how to cook the lasagna and I have all this stuff on my screen that's just extra noise. So what I would probably do is I would find where that search thing is. I don't know what it's called. It's called like search. So we got a search component here, and I'm going to go ahead and find, by doing a full project search, where that is. And he puts the search thing in the header. And as I was mentioning, like we don't want the search to show up on every page, because even if you go to the blog, like why is it showing up on the blog? So I'm kind of doing something that might be against like what his UX is, but I think this will be a better user experience. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the pages that might need that. So I'm guessing the search page might need it, and I think there's one called cuisines. So on the cuisines, let's just put the search here. See what happens. And still showing up. It's showing up twice right now, so I need to go to the header and save that because I deleted it from the header. So now it only shows up once for the cuisines, and I think it's in the wrong position. So do I have it in the wrong thing? Cuisine American. So it's always good to go to your router. I forget what he calls it. He calls it routes. And find out what route we're on. We're on Cuisine American. Find cuisine. Right here. Cuisine type. Components, cuisines. Yeah, I guess this is it. I guess I'm wondering why search is showing up underneath whatever these things are. I don't know what this thing is called. Another approach you can do is I can go ahead and actually I forget what this one's called. It's called a back button search. Is it on app? Recipes about. I think there's like a top level component that's wrapping everything, and I forget what it is. Home categories. So I think categories, again, like this is something that shows up on every page. And I personally would like only show it on the pages that need it. So I'm going to cut categories out, go to cuisines and put it here directly. Now, one thing I will say, like that I like about the way his code set up, when you can easily cut a component out and put it on another page, that's a good sign that you've done something right, because now this component can basically live in isolation and you can move it around wherever you want. If you have to like do a bunch of extra work whenever you try to move a component, sometimes that's a red flag that you couple the component too much to the place that it lives. And typically that happens if you do prop drilling and stuff, but it's a trade-off. I think prop drilling it's easier to understand like what you're looking at. Did I not save the home page? I don't think I did. All right, there we go. So again, the idea in my head is like when you're on the blog, when you're on your meal plan, when you're on your profile, don't have that thing displayed everywhere. Only show that when you actually go to like the main page to search. Now, right now you can't really get back to it. So maybe I would add in I think there's one called like header or navigation. I think it's called header menu. I would probably just add another one for like finding the cuisines. Don't know if I spelled that right. Cuisines, yeah. And I would just go ahead and say the cuisines American or something. Just hard code it to American. Is it called America? Did I spell it wrong? I probably did. Cuisines American. Dang it. Let's go back to the index of the routes and make sure oh, it's cuisine, just no S. There we go. So now you click on the cuisines, the icon's probably bad, but now it's like, this only happens here. Now I did break it a little bit. If you see it's kind of appending the same thing twice, I think that's like a relative absolute path issue. So let's go to he called it categories, and let's go ahead and save this. And I believe here, you should probably just put a / here so that when I click on the different categories, it actually like works. And then when I type in the search bar, I'm gonna type pizza. Again, that takes you to a page called searched. Now this is missing the categories in the search bar. So what I would probably do is I'll go back to the cuisines page, copy these two, and then I go to searched, save this, and just go ahead and paste those in here. And I believe that'll kind of get us going. I think the search bar needs to come. I don't remember. Was the search bar above the categories or below it? At this point, I don't remember. I think categories would be above. But anyway, I don't know. I think it makes more sense to have the search above. Now I'm just kind of redesigning his whole application, so maybe I should get back on track with like what he originally wanted was refactoring his React code and not changing his implementation. Anyway, I think this is a better user experience. Could use some more work, but so I think one of the most difficult part of his applications, I kind of looked through his code to understand it, and the most difficult part by far is the meal plan. So there's some pretty complex logic going on here. So let's go and look at the meal plan. And before I go down any more paths, I'm going to commit. It's always good to commit along the way if you make changes and everything seems like it's working. So I'm gonna go ahead and like check out a new branch called like refactoring live. And I'm gonna go ahead and add my changes and go ahead and commit them, refactoring the categories. And what else did we do? We did the search bar and tabs. How about that? Go ahead and git push that. What's it complaining about? My upstream, git push, set upstream origin, refactoring live. Okay. Okay, I can't push because, yeah, I don't have access to his repo. So anyway, I mean, that's probably good. So, all right, buckle up, y'all. This one's gonna get kind of crazy. So I'm gonna save the file so we get some better looking code. Here is his meal plan. He's doing a lot of abstraction for his custom hooks, which honestly, when I first read this code, I'm like overwhelmed with what's going on. For some reason, when I read React code and just other people's code, like I have to sit here and think about it for a long time before I actually start clicking. And one thing that really helps understand stuff better is like name stuff a little bit better. And if you do any type of like domain driven development, the things you name in your code should match your business. Okay, so if you look at these components, what is this thing doing? Well, when you click it, it shows some type of like section where you can add in a meal plan for dinner or snack or brunch, right? So what is this? What would you call this thing? I would call it like an add meal plan section. That's how I would call it. And if you go back to his code, let's look at what he calls it. He calls it, I don't know. What does he call it? Not the sub meal stuff. Meal adding recipe index. Oh, it is this. This is what he calls it. Open sub meal field handler. To me, that's not really descriptive. That doesn't really help me understand like what he's getting at. Instead, if it was called like open add meal plan panel or section, how about that? Open add meal plan section. I think that's more descriptive than what it was before, which is open sub meal field handler. That's just me though. Maybe my brain works a little bit different, but I would go ahead and just rename that. And we're going to use that wherever we just broke that. Okay. And then if you look at this custom hook he has, he is typing everything. So one thing that I'll point out is TypeScript is smart. TypeScript can infer types for you. So when you have a function here, you don't always need to go and define a type and specify what it's going to return. Okay. So he's specifying a type saying this has three things, 2 functions, and then a Boolean. Watch what happens when I just delete this stuff. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to delete this and delete that. If I hover over this function, it still basically has the exact same types set up. Okay, because TypeScript's able to look at this code and it's able to infer what's being returned, and then it's going to basically create a type for you. And if I go back here and hover over this, those types are there. So you don't have to type everything in TypeScript. And the less you type, the easier it is to understand the code. So even this use state, you don't need to put Boolean here because TypeScript's going to look to see you pass false. And when you hover over it, it's saying use state of Boolean. So keep that in mind, like even void, I don't think you need to put void here. Don't think you need to put void here. If you hover over this method, it's still the exact same types. So the less code you can write, the easier it is to kind of understand. So can we refactor this a little bit more? What is this thing called? Use change status of sub meal menu. I would maybe name this something else because I know like sub meal menu, I'm going to call it add meal plan section. Now what can we put here instead? Use add meal plan section. I don't know, maybe that's better. You can tell me if my naming conventions are not as up to par as you think they should be. But anywhere I have this like stuff named up, I'm just going to go ahead and say like is add meal plan section displayed. Go ahead and do this. It's okay to be verbose with your naming, in my opinion, because it's easier to understand the code if you can actually like read what you're looking at. So let's go ahead and use that little state variable. We're going to use it here. And then I'm going to go ahead and rename this to, this one's probably should just be called close add meal plan section. Okay. So now we've kind of renamed some of the stuff, and the file itself should probably be renamed because I changed it. I'm gonna go ahead and rename that and then save this file. We probably have a ton of errors. Go ahead and see if we can just use this use add meal plan. Go ahead and bring this stuff out. And honestly, like, this might be another instance where like we probably could have just made this into a subcomponent or something. And like maybe the state didn't need to be at a higher level to make it easier to understand. Let's go ahead and call that is meal plan section displayed. I believe he uses it here. Okay. Does that work? Seems like it. That's cool. And then like to make this even more obvious to a developer and like a person, we could put some placeholder text here. So if we go to that meal plan thing is, which, where is that? Sub meal field. Honestly, like this one should have been called like add meal plan, not sub field meal or whatever this is. So I'm gonna go ahead and say add meal plan. Go ahead and rename this one a little bit. I honestly don't like to have a separate types folder. Like, I don't think there's a benefit to that. Like, just go ahead and put them where you want them. I guess I could just put them here. So that you don't have to have like all these different files for like something really small. But anyway, add meal plan section. You know, let's keep the naming kind of consistent with what we did with that custom hook. And I think it'll kind of be easier to understand. So if I use that instead, go ahead and import that. And I will say is displayed. Because before this was called is sub meal menu. Like that's not really a good name. I would just say is displayed. The generic term for the section. Go ahead and do that. Again, you don't need to type all your React components. Like just don't type them. Or if you do type them, do it here. This could be a Boolean that you type. And anywhere we have is sub meal, whatever, just go ahead and say that. Is this thing being used anywhere? That's not being used. Submit. What is this one doing? This one we probably do need. It's used in two different places, so it makes sense to have this to be a type. I don't know if we need to export it. I don't think we even need to export it anymore. Don't need functional component here. Yeah, what else is what is he doing here? Don't need void. It's going to be void by default, I believe. Yeah. So let's go back to the meal plan. This is like the original thing that we're trying to focus on. And did we make this cleaner? So now when you're reading through the code, we have, let me put some spaces here. I think it'll make it easier to actually like understand. Use meal plan section. Open add meal plan section. Close add meal plan section. Is add meal plan section displayed. Okay, you scroll down the code a little bit more. We have a meal plan item add, open add meal plan section with a plus sign. And down here, we actually pass it to know if it's displayed or not. So these are the two components I actually need to know about this stuff. Technically, we could pull this whole thing out to like a component, and that would have kind of removed the need to have this here. It's up to you. I mean, it's probably fine here. This thing, if you read this one line kind of seems kind of confusing. I would probably make this a derived just so it's easier to understand. So I'll say const day of week title. How about that? I think that's what he's going for here. And if I just display that here, now when I read through my actual component, it's super apparent like what this is doing, in my opinion. And then he has this thing here, like Not sure what this is. Like at a glance, if you look at code and at a glance, you have no idea what it's doing and you have to like sit there and churn for a little bit. That's a good sign that you should probably abstract that into some type of derived. And this is called like is user defined, I think. I'm still not even certain like what this is. But he has this and he has like a ternary, which is going to display content. Otherwise, it's not going to display anything. I would just fail early. I would just return early and just say like, if is user defined, and then I'll just return this not authorized page. Then you don't need to do the ternary, because I find ternaries really hard to understand. Sometimes they can get kind of out of hand. All right, so a little bit better. Can we actually use the app or did we break everything? So let's go to the add meal plan component, which is over here. What is this thing complaining about? Guess I should read the error. Cannot resolved pages meal plan sub meal field and meal plan. Yeah, I think I renamed this. So let's try to find out where we're doing that. And it's red. So we could just delete that. So I'm looking at this. I think these types were also declared here. Hold on a second. Sub meal field. What I'm going to do is I'm also rename this folder to be this. Don't know what that's going to break. Probably going to break some more stuff, but he had a type here, submit sub meal type. He has it defined in different places. Okay, so like, again, try to dry code up. If you don't need to declare it multiple places, then don't. And I guess I'm wondering why he did that. Maybe I'm not too sure. But just have it defined one place if you can. Components, containers, form container. Are we using a form container here? We are. Okay. Form container. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this. Like he has this generic form container, but every time you have a different form, you have to like put in a different type. I don't know. I'm not going to bother with that though. Let's go back to this page. Did we fix the app? Is it working? Where's that failing at? Here. Always check your application as you're making changes because you don't want to break stuff and then like not know what you broke. And yeah, now it's working. It's pretty good. All right, so let's keep on working on the meal plan. And let's see if we can kind of continue to make this a little bit cleaner because it's still a little bit, it's a lot. It's a lot to look at this component and it's kind of confusing. So let's keep on looking through. One thing that I think you should try to do is if you look at like, if you're able to collapse something and you just like hit it in like 60, 70, 80 lines of code, that's probably a good sign that maybe it should be like put into its own component, especially if you're doing a map on it. Like whenever you do a dot map, the thing that you're returning from the map, it's a good sign that like this should probably be its own component because it's doing quite a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new component here. And I personally don't like making all these folders for like just making a simple component. Like I'd rather just put it right at the top. Like see how many folders there are? It's like hard to like manage all this stuff. Like just put it in here, meal plan. I'll call it like meal plan item.tsx. And we're going to go ahead and just create a TypeScript file like that. Paste that all in. Export it. Don't need props. Don't need any of this stuff. We're going to figure this out. So meal plan item. I'm instead going to render out a meal plan item here, which I'm going to import. So one thing, I don't like style components. I'll be honest with you. I think style components make your code much harder to understand. And the main gripe I have with them is that like, you can't easily tell what's a component for abstracting away logic and what's a component for abstracting away styles. So what a lot of people do, or at least what I've seen people do, is from your styles folder, they will import star as, I've seen them do styled here. You can do S here. I'll just do like style because I think that's a more common convention. But I would probably do that for a majority of your components, because now when I do that, I can look at your code and I know, okay, this is just an abstraction for styling. This isn't a real component. This doesn't do anything. This doesn't have real logic. Versus this, I look at this. This is a real component. And if I go into it, it has a bunch of logic and abstractions for the logic. So I personally like to prefix anything that's a style component with this styled thing. I'll be honest, I rather work with Tailwind because I just don't like style components. But again, like my goal here is not to rechange the tech stack that he's using. My goal is to work with this tech stack and try to make stuff a little bit cleaner if I can. Why is this complaining? Must have one parent. So now, yeah, I don't know why I even did all of this. I could just delete all this right now. Go ahead and auto import this because this is a real component. It doesn't have this style component thing. Go ahead and import that here. And when you do stuff like that, you'll see with your linter that like you don't have functions that are used anymore. That's a good sign. You've found a way to basically pull out a subcomponent and you've reduced the actual like cognitive overhead it takes to understand the meal plan component, in my opinion. So let's just go ahead and paste this in. I'm also going to pull in all those styles again like this so that we can actually like style this stuff. So bear with me as I add a styled here. I'll do it. Oops. I'll do it here, 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 do it here. I don't think dish is a style component. But let's, yeah, submenu item is not a style component. Anytime it turns red, we know we kind of added the prefix incorrectly, I think. So we do need to import this one. String cut. Need to pull that in. It's taking so long for my auto import to even load. I don't know if I need to restart my computer or something, but import dish. All right, so we'll come back and fix some of these things in a bit. Oh wait, this one is actually like a font awesome or React font icon. So let's do that. But anyway, let's go back to the map. So before, like we were passing in index and submeal. I think whenever you have index here, that's always a red flag. Like you shouldn't be tracking stuff based on index. If the component you have, or if the object you have has like an ID, which I believe the submeal does. I forget how you do it. It's like Control Shift 12. Anyway, I would probably just pass the submeal directly here and just have that taken as a prop, like this submeal. And if you hover over submeal, it tells you it has an ID. So it already has like a unique ID. There's no need to like pass index around. Let's go back and clean up this component a little bit because we've kind of deleted some need of various things, which is good. It's always fun to delete code and just move it out to other files to make stuff easier to understand. This stuff can be deleted. Delete submenu. I guess I could delete this one too. All right, so this component, delete submenu handler. Let me go ahead and auto import this. Probably need to auto import this as well. Don't need to call reset status on anything. Let's go ahead and just save this and see if we can kind of get through these errors real quick. Why is this one red? Oh, I guess I need to auto import that too. And again, these are like Redux things, so like we can just import them and it makes our component easier to just like quickly move around and stuff from one page to the other if we ever needed to. Or if you wanted to do like a more dumb presentational component, like you could just pass in the things that are needed. Maybe we'll do that. I don't know. I haven't really gotten around to it, but I'm thinking about that. Let's look at this. So motion, I think I need to import from his constants here. And then he has some icons here still. Got to import those. I think we're almost there. So he has a function open menu adding recipe handler. Open menu adding recipe handler. Again, like the naming of some of this stuff is just confusing. I would maybe name this like let's look at the UI. Well, it's all broken, but this is basically where you click those 3 dots and it makes a drop down. So honestly, like I would probably call this like use open drop down menu. Or use, I'm sorry, let's make this more specific. Use open menu meal actions drop down menu. How about that? So it's a little bit more descriptive maybe. And we're going to try to do this. And I think actually what we need to do is like probably not have this component know about that. Instead, we could like have this component kind of know about it and pass in whatever props. Because I think what this is doing, this is setting up state, but he also wants to like clear out the state automatically here. So it makes sense if this thing was probably pulled up here, which I need to rename this file now. Go ahead and do this. Rename that file, make sure that's properly named. Go here. This is red. Auto import that. So what are some of the things that this custom hook is responsible for? I think it's mainly responsible for keeping track of what dropdown is actually open. So we could keep track of that with like a record. This is a TypeScript type where you can say records could be a string and that could be a Boolean. So we'll use like a map to know what's been open or not. And we're going to rename some of the stuff. So I'm going to say like is drop down open. Set is drop down open. How about that? And let's just go ahead and return some of this stuff. So he has a function here called open menu adding recipe handler. It takes in an index. I probably let this actually take in like a menu ID or a meal ID or something that could be a string instead of an index. And we're going to go ahead and say open drop down menu. And we're going to go ahead and just say like, we'll do this and we will just call this. Bear with me. I'm kind of like prototyping, but I think this will probably do what we want. In fact, I'm going to call this toggle. Toggle drop down menu. And this could just be the negation of whatever is already set with the meal ID. So, I mean, like typically you know how to toggle stuff, hopefully. And I think that'll be good. So this will be a better name here. And then I'm going to go ahead and say like close all drop downs. I think that's kind of what he's doing here. And I can just go ahead and say set is drop down open. I'm going to pass it an empty object and that should close everything because it's going to reset everything back to undefined. Go ahead and do that. And I'll make a method here that will just say like const is drop down. You know what? For now, I'm just going to return is drop down open. So now we have a custom hook here. A little bit better names, in my opinion. You can be the judge of that, though. And inside of this mail planner, we are going to basically take in some of that stuff, such as, you know, for right now, let's just put all those things in and we'll just delete them if we don't end up using them. Just go ahead and do that. And we're going to basically pass all this stuff in. Or let's see where we can use this. So close all dropdowns. I believe this could be used here, like so. I don't know what he's doing with this like use memo. He's like, he makes an array of actions and then he wraps it in a memo and then he uses that in the effect and then he passes that inside the dependencies. So like there's just too much stuff going on here. And honestly, if you can keep it simple by just like doing this, then you just made your code like so much more cleaner. I think it's complaining because I need to pass in these dependencies, but I don't know if you saw what I kind of did there, but like this effect is much cleaner than whatever's going on before, in my opinion. Like he was making an array just so that you can like do a for each over the array. It's just two functions. Just call those two functions, and the code is much easier to understand. Basically, when you change the active day, close everything. All right, so let's keep going. Let's see. Sub plan item. Yeah, we might not need to use any of these things. We might need to actually use those inside of this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those in here. And we're going to go ahead and just use some of those. So like toggle drop down could be this one. And I'm going to pass in submeal ID. And then for this one is drop down open. I think he's doing that like here. So like we could pass in is drop down open. I believe this needs to be like a submeal ID. Like so. This might be better as like a derived potentially. I think this might be better as a derived. This looks kind of weird. So let's say like const show drop down like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and just use that instead. Are there any more errors? I need to auto import this one. Like so. Close all drop downs can go away. It's not being used. These things are never used. Use open adding recipe. Menu add a recipe. Yeah, I don't know. Let's just delete that. Let's just delete this. All right, what do we break? Let's just go ahead and just delete whatever we don't need. Those things aren't used here. Open. That's the one we just renamed, so we don't need this. All right. Did we improve this at all? That's the real question. You got some drop downs here. You can click them and toggle them off. That's still working. Awesome. And when you click on a new thing, it closes them. Well, it's supposed to close them. I don't know why it's keeping some of them open. So we have to look into that bug. But it was supposed to call this close all drop downs. So let's actually make sure that this is getting called. In fact, what I'll do is I will go to that method. So close all drop downs. That's a callback. Close all drop downs. You can see it print out over here. Close all drop downs. Let's make sure you click on this. So it is closing, but maybe we're doing something incorrect. Maybe it's something with like the callback or is dropdown open? So like, how do we know if the dropdown should be displayed? We check if the submeal ID is set to true, then we show the dropdown. But I do find it weird that it only shows for like one of them and not all of them. So it's definitely closing some stuff out. So let's go ahead and just like try to figure this out. Refresh the page real quick. Make sure there's no like weird state stuff going on. I'm going to open up the drop downs here. Which pages? This one is still set to true for some reason. Yeah, why would this one still be true? This kind of gives me symptoms of like the batching. Like I should probably actually do something like this. And I'll say like drop down states, drop down open state. How about that? Parsing error declaration or statement. What? I don't know what this is complaining about. Sometimes you gotta restart TypeScript. Maybe this is like a weird error with TypeScript. A spread argument must either have a tuple type or be passed to a rest parameter. Huh. Oh, is it because I'm missing parentheses? Okay, yeah, I was just missing some parentheses. Let's see if this actually does anything. I don't know if it will. It probably won't. Why is this one still open? Do I need to pass this a callback and pass it just an empty object here? Like, I don't know why. Have all these open, you go back and it's still set to be open. Well, I do have an error complaining about keys, so maybe we should probably find where we're doing the map, and maybe this could be related. Like, you should always put keys on the things that you're mapping over, because React doesn't know how to properly like update them if you don't do that. This could potentially be the issue, so let's go ahead and do that and go back. That was the issue. Okay, so if there's ever red in your console, like pay attention to it, because sometimes that will be pointing you to what's going on with React and why stuff is not closing when it should be. Let's go to this little, so yeah, a quick recap. Did this make stuff cleaner? So now we have a meal plan page. We have a couple of custom hooks we're calling. One of them is called use add meal plan section, where we can open the meal plan section, close it, and we can check if it's being displayed. And then we also have the ability to close all the dropdowns that are open. We have a method we can call to close the meal plan section. We have a day of the week title, is user defined, and then we kind of cleaned up all of this logic. Even this right here could be cleaned up a little bit. Like this could be a derived, like I said, that const has meals, is that what it's called? As sub meals. I'm not a big fan of the word sub meals, but I guess it's kind of, we can just keep it. So I'm gonna do that instead. And I guess we could also like sub meals is here. Active day dot sub meals. If you can kind of like, the less code that you have on the page, I believe it's going to be better. So like what I'm doing is just kind of cleaning up some of this stuff. Yeah, I think this makes more sense in my head. Like if the stuff's named a little bit better. I'm still not a big fan of like custom hooks. I don't think it, like it's abstracting away state. And yeah, that can be sometimes better, but it's also sometimes pretty confusing. React just confuses me sometimes. I don't know. But yeah, so that meal plan is looking good. We have these custom hooks that are looking good. We have the page. It looks like it's fixed now. Doesn't have any more bugs. And also, whenever you get to a good stopping point and like just add your stuff, git add all. I'll say refactoring the meal plan page. There we go. So at this point, I mean, we can kind of dive through, like there's some stuff I was looking at for the reducers. There's like a meal slice. And some of this code is like, it's a little intense. Like if you look at this, so delete recipe from meal plan. He wants to update the week plan. He does a map over it. And then he has like a nested if statement. And then like he has a return nested if statement. This is like the React way to do things sometimes. And it's just kind of like messy. I mean, there's probably a better way to do it, but we can try to refactor this a little bit. Like what he's trying to do is he wants to get the current week plan. So I can say like const week plan. Actually, no, I think he's trying to get the current day. So if I just need to get the current day, I could just do a find. right? This is why it has like a one if statement in here, because he's trying to find the thing that matches the ID week. I don't know why he's using the word ID week, because these things refer to the days. It should have been called like day ID, but he called it ID week for some reason. So we can get the day, and then that will take care of like that first thing. And then we can get the const submeal is equal to day.submeals.find meal, and then put this if statement here. So get the submeal based on the submeal ID that's in the payload. And then I think he just wants to like update something. He wants to update the submeal dishes be this. And then unfortunately you have to say like if there's no submeal return. Something like that. So to me, this makes more sense. This is more like a, it's less of that like ugly nesting, which is kind of confusing to me. So I would try to strive to do this, especially since you're using Redux Toolkit and you have like this ability to use mutations. Like you could just mutate the object that you want, and then it seems like you're just storing it in state too. So I think after the slice is done running this reducer or whatever this thing's called, this action, I believe it'll just like look at what's changed on this object, and then it'll create your commit for you, or it'll create the, let me stop talking. I don't know what it does, but I believe this will work. So like, let's make sure this works. If I go to Friday and delete that, it still works. Cool. Awesome. I will say that like the fact that he stores all this stuff in local storage, this is something that should be stored in your backend API, right? You don't want this to be specific to your laptop, right? I want to be able to log in on any computer and have all my stuff saved. So I would say that like all your meal plans and your whatever, like those should be stored in a database and not inside of your reducer. And I think if you had engineered for that to begin with, like this slice wouldn't be so confusing, because now you wouldn't have to actually like have all this stuff in your slice. You could just have individual methods for updating your meals on your API, and you could just like refetch them. Using React Query could probably help clean that up a lot too. There's like one more thing I kind of wanted to talk about. Like I think I'm done with the refactoring. I think I did good. It looks better. But there's something that I wanted to point out. He has like lazy loaded stuff everywhere. He's going really hard in the lazy loading. And I wanted to point something out. Like if I go to the details page, and let's just go ahead and like move this to the bottom so I can show you what I'm talking about. So lazy loading is a good way to like have your React application split up into smaller files so that the initial bundle when you load your website isn't so big. Okay, it's a good thing to do. It sounds like a good thing to do. And frameworks like Next kind of take care of it, you know, using Vite or using Create React App. Typically when you do like the .lazy method, which you will see all throughout this guy's application, right here, he basically wraps everything with a lazy. But you have to think like what actually are we achieving with this, and are we actually achieving much? So if you look at the network tab, I've already loaded the details, and when I click ingredients, notice that it fetches the ingredients chunk, which happens to be 2.4 kilobytes, so it's not that big. And then we fetch all of these fonts, which are actually pretty big, right? We have like 100 kilobytes worth of fonts. So that's cool, but we wonder, why is it fetching these fonts? It should have already fetched them, right? So then I'm going to close this. I'm going to click on cooking. If you look here, it fetches fonts again. And I believe this is due to your lazy loading. I don't really know why. I had to look into the details of this. But sometimes you do things in code because you think you're making stuff more performant or you're making stuff more optimized, but you don't realize that you're actually causing it to just refetch a bunch of fonts over and over again. Like we literally just fetched those fonts. Why is React trying to fetch them again? Okay, so these are things you want to keep in mind. Like Yeah, sure, lazy loading will make your initial bundle size smaller. But if you're kind of concerned about your bundle size, you should probably be using Next.js to begin with, because every page will just be automatically like code split, and like all the things that are on this page, like the individual things, I don't think you need to lazy load them. Like you could lazy load the page as you switch between cuisines and favorites and blogs and stuff if you wanted to. But again, like how much data are you saving? I don't know. It keeps loading the fonts every time too. I don't know if that's just because we're doing like development mode locally, but it sure likes to reload these fonts every single time, which is kind of a red flag to me. I think something's just maybe misconfigured in your app. I didn't really look at these filters. He has these cool filters here. I didn't really look at those, but honestly, I think this was enough. Hopefully this was a good like overview of how you can clean some code up, how we take a tabs component and make it more generic, how you can use derived values to make your code a little bit easier to understand and make your presentation section down here easier to like digest. Again, just strive for like keeping the code as simple as possible. Like I think one good example of like where stuff was going crazy was when he had that array over here and he was like using like a memo on the array just so that he can put two things inside the array and then he can do a dot for each on it. Like that's a good example of over engineering. Like just call the methods. That's it. You're done. Just call the methods. And then naming some of these custom hooks to be more descriptive. Like I should be able to read through your code and easily map it with the view of like, okay, this hook, use set active meal day. I guess that one makes sense. This was probably going to be used for the week, right? So the week's here. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to really cover in this video. If you want to talk to me directly, feel free to join my Discord or leave a comment in the video. I try to reply to my comments. And if you're kind of stuck with React or you want to like, get more information about coding or Node or whatever, there's a lot of people in my Discord community who are willing to help answer questions if you're stuck. I'm trying to build a community of friendly people who are willing to help beginners who are learning how to code. So definitely check it out. It's in the description below. Otherwise, have a good day and happy coding.